What would happen to Brexit negotiations if the European Union put the Roman Emperor Trajan in charge? Ever since the Brexit vote in 2016, negotiations have been long and difficult. The different parties have so far been unable to agree, but what would happen if the EU involved a very special negotiator, the Roman Emperor Trajan? While appointing an all-powerful ruler to be your chief diplomat may seem unlikely to diminish complaints about European overreach, the Roman Empire's system of government may have some things to please even the most hardened Brexiteer. Despite what you might think, Roman emperors were often fairly flexible in their style of government. They frequently adopted the pre-existing institutions of their empire's provinces and even listened to the wishes of the locals, as long as they didn't rebel and were careful to pay their taxes. While the EU and the Roman Empire are of course very different political entities, they faced a number of similar difficulties, and I would like to see what we might want to take away from history and what we shouldn't. Above all, Roman provincial administration was focused on maintaining the stability of the empire, but this did not mean that every aspect of life in the provinces had to be tightly controlled. In Trajan's time, the Roman Empire encompassed a huge range of territories across Europe, Northern Africa and the Middle East, all of which had cultures, customs and traditions of their own. Under such circumstances, imposing uniform laws and a centralized system of government would likely have been met with significant resistance, even if it had been practically possible given the methods of communication available at the time. For this reason, the Roman authorities used a different way of governing their territories, which proved to be remarkably successful. In general, they allowed the inhabitants of the provinces to keep their pre-existing laws, institutions and sometimes even local governments, while likely implementing few centralized measures. Furthermore, rather than controlling his entire empire himself, Trajan relied heavily on the Roman governors he appointed to run specific provinces on his behalf. One of these governors, Pliny the Younger, left behind some of his correspondence with the emperor, and these letters provide us with a fascinating insight into Trajan's style of government. While Pliny regularly asked the emperor's approval for his ideas, Trajan just as often responded that Pliny himself, as the man on the scene, was best qualified to judge the situation himself. Both men also relied on petitions by the local population, which meant that flexibility and negotiation were inevitably central parts of Roman provincial administration. However, there were also certain hard limits. Any group that was perceived to fundamentally threaten the stability of Roman rule would have been a definite no-go in Trajan's eyes, whether it was a province trying to reclaim its independence or one of the religious groups that are the main focus of my research. Such disruptive elements would have been met with a strong response, possibly even military intervention. Roman rule was frequently flexible when emperors felt they could afford to be, but when they didn't, a no-deal Brexit could just as well be the least of your worries.